Welcome to another episode of Wellness with Wandia. Wellness with Wandia is a holistic approach to wellness where we look at the individual physically, emotionally, spiritually, and relationally. On today's story time, I'll be sharing my experience on going up Mount Kilimanjaro for my very first time. And hopefully from this experience, you will learn something about going through life, climbing mountains, facing challenges without giving up. Remember in the last story of Mount Kenya, I said that I was never going to go back to the mountain. Of course I did. So I went back to Mount Kenya, had a better experience, and it gave me the confidence to look for another mountain. And I said, okay, let's go and check out what this Kilimanjaro looks like. It's the highest point in Africa and one of the 7 summits. Even then I didn't even know about 7 summits, but I just knew it's the highest point in Africa and I was good to go. So I got together a team and we were about 7 of us. In the build up to climb Mount Kilimanjaro, I knew I needed to do things different. So the first thing I did was invite the guide who was taking us up the mountain to come and actually look at our gear before we go so that we can identify the gaps, buy what needed to be bought. So this time around, there was no scuba incident. I didn't wear a scuba suit. If you missed the story about scuba, go back and watch Mount Kenya. So he came in, he checked out our gear, and the gaps were identified, and off we went to shop for the things. So gear-wise, I was better off. My father was still going through Alzheimer's. Luckily for us this time around, there was no emergency. So I was going with that. Of course, that was still playing on my mind. Before I left, I spoke to my brother and he just challenged me and told me, you are aware that your father climbed up to Gilman's Point before you were born with less gear. So you can only go beyond. He was not asking, it was a statement of fact. I had no concept, I had no idea. So I said, okay. But I remember telling one of the ladies that I was climbing with that, this is what I've been told. So in the event you see that I am not trying to make it, I want to give up, just remind me this. And she said, okay, fine, fantastic. Based on my past experience, I don't know why I just felt a sense of foreboding as I was planning for this particular trip. And I felt like I was going to go and die on the mountain. I mean, I guess you can ask me, why do you keep climbing these things if you think you're going to die? Anyway, I feel the fear and I move into it. So because I thought I wasn't going to survive, I wrote up a very comprehensive list detailing where everything was. My bank accounts, my access, everything. And handed over to my next of kin, my mother. And she looked at me and she asked me, why are you giving me these things? I said, no, you never know, just in case. And off I went. I don't know if I was being dramatic, but that's what I just felt. I just felt like I may go to this mountain and not come back. And I actually told on the lady, I told her that I think there's a chance I may not come back from Mount Kilimanjaro. Anyway, clearly I came back. So we left. The team was ready. There was a lady and her brother-in-law, and there was some gentlemen and other ladies. We were a team of about 8 of us. Got onto the shuttle, went to Arusha. We were spending one night in Arusha, and we were going to begin the expedition the following day. When we got to Arusha, the lead guide came and told me, or rather asked, if we could allow a foreigner to join us. There was a Ugandan fellow called Lumala, who found himself climbing Kilimanjaro, or going to climb Kilimanjaro, but his team had fallen off, so we were asked if he could join us. And I said, okay, no problem, let him come over. I asked the team, do you guys mind if somebody else joins us? And guys were okay. So he came over and we spent the rest of the afternoon into the evening just getting to know each other and having a conversation. And he really gelled well with the rest of the team. So he was a good addition. And a good addition because there's a story around that. Mountain Slayers Uganda was born during that particular expedition because Lumala joined us. But that is the point where Mountain Slayers Uganda was born. But anyway, that's a story for another day. So he came in and he was, he fit in with the people that we were. So we spent the evening catching up, beating stories, and the next day, off we went to the mountain. We were climbing the Coca-Cola route, which is called a Marangu route. So we got to the gate, all protocols cleared, and started our climb. Now this Ugandan guy, Before we started climbing, he got onto all fours and did like 20 or 30 push-ups. Hey, us guys, we looked at each other and were like, who exactly are you climbing with? This guy is doing press-ups before we start climbing. Anyway, we got our stuff together and off we were. Day one was okay. Scenic walk through the rainforest, or rather a really nice, calm, relaxing walk through the rainforest to our first hut, which is Mandara Hut. And we got there in good time, settled down. Back in the day, the huts that exist now were not as many as they currently are. So we're all sleeping in the same space, unisex accommodation. So we got into that space and changed, did what needed to be done, and spent the night. Next day, no drama, moved to Horombo, where we spent 2 days, or 2 nights, acclimatizing. The guides were continuously checking in on us just to ensure that we're okay, briefing us what's to be expected the next day. Of course, our minds are running forward in terms of what do we need to expect, going to the summit, are we going to make it, really wondering. And they were very encouraging and said, don't worry, you guys are okay, you'll make it. Between Horombo and Kibo, which is the base camp for the summit on Marangu route, you need to go through a saddle, which is like a desert. And they had told us this desert tends to play heavily on people's minds. One, because the wind is very strong, and two, you'll spot the hut that you're going to, but you're not getting there. So they told us, you will see it, but it will take time to get there. So just keep moving. So as we were making our way through the saddle, tears just started flowing out of my eyes. Remember I told you guys I was a crier. So tears start flowing. And I'm working with this lady who, that's not her thing. She doesn't know what to do with tears. So she called the guide and was like, hey, deal with this, madam. So the guide comes up to me, he checks, one day, are you okay? I say, I'm okay. And he says, okay, then just sip your water and let's keep walking. And that was it. Looking back, the reason the tears were crying, the reason the tears were flowing at that time is not that I was in any physical pain. I was not feeling extremely challenged. It's the weight of what I was carrying. My dad's illness really took a toll on me. And when in Nairobi, I could not allow that to come out. So the mountains were a safe space for me to allow myself to ventilate and to just be. So the tears just flowed. I wiped them off and we kept moving. Kibo Hut is 4,720 meters above sea level, and Mount Kenya is 4,895 meters above sea level. Basically, we're sleeping at Lenana. But just like we had been promised, just before getting to Kibo Hut, you keep moving, you walk 10 steps, you look up, you have not reached. You look down. You walk again, you look up, you're not reaching. The distance doesn't seem to be closing. I was so done. So eventually I just removed my backpack, dropped it on the ground and kept walking. I didn't care who was behind me. I didn't care how that backpack was going to find me. I just dropped it and moved. Can't believe how dramatic I used to be back in the day. So I dropped it and I got in. We got into Kibo, freshened up, and now as we're having our dinner, the briefing for what to expect for summit night was given to us. The previous days is a build-up to determine the time that we need to start our expedition. And for this particular trip, the guides decided that 11 p.m. would be the kickoff time. Meaning that we had to wake up at 10 p.m. Meaning that since we slept at 7, we hadn't really rested, so we're exhausted. Somewhere along the way, one of our clients, one of the team members, had suffered some severe mountain sickness, so had to be taken off the mountain. The rest of us were still trudging on. So we already know we've got one member who is down. He's not too bad. He'll be waiting for us in Arusha when we get there. Then we're getting ready in the morning. We've woken up, we're getting ready in the night. And one of the gentlemen there had forgotten his balaclava and his gloves. So he asked if anybody had extra. I had an extra balaclava and another lady had an extra pair of gloves. I had really no concept of what Gilman's is. I had no concept of what the summit was. My only frame of reference was Mount Kenya. But Mount Kilimanjaro is a whole different monster. And for that first time, I couldn't even fathom why we're starting at 11 for a 6-kilometer hike. I couldn't understand that. But once we began and we started going through the checkpoints, the wind beating at us, the slow pace that we were moving up that mountain, I was so tapped out. I was done. I was exhausted. And when we eventually got to Hansmeier, I knew I didn't want to quit yet, but I wanted my balaclava back. Remember, the wind is blowing. Of course, now our noses are dripping. So, of course, this guy has already soiled the balaclava. Why was I asking for it? I guess it's just because I was tired and I was angry again about being on a mountain. So, I wanted my balaclava back. The guy looked at me. Then he just moved aside and he told me, he took a couple of steps away off the path. And he told me, if you want the balaclava, come for it. He knew there was no way I was going to go there because there was no way I was going to take extra steps beyond where we are going. Anyway, continued up. Digging deep, moving. After Hansmeier, getting to Jamaica before Gilman's. When you hear the term Jamaica, you imagine it is something on a beach or something which is fun. Shock on us, the boulders that we had to crawl over to get to Gilman's. I think it took us almost 2 hours to get there. We got to Gilman's and I was done. Again, I was done. I was ready to get off the mountain. This was good enough for a first attempt. I'll come back another day. The lady who I had told about this story, she just reminded me, hey, remember? Your father got here, so. Man, I dug deep. Sometimes in life you think you've reached the end, but there's still another layer. Human beings are so resilient. I had another layer. So I dug deep. I dug deep and we pushed all the way. Stella Point, all the way to Huru. But you can see the strain in our faces. The photos that we took on Mount Kilimanjaro summit were terrible. There were no smiles, there were grimaces, there was anger on our faces. That was what getting to Uhuru Peak did. It sucked the life out of me. The unfortunate thing is that this is not the end. You have to still go back down. So we turned around after finishing taking our pictures and started making our way off the mountain. Got to Stella, got to Gilman's. The guides were trying to manage all of us, but there was a gap where we were left about 5 of us, or 4 of us. And we started Gilman's and we blacked out. The first guide who came there and realized what had happened, oh my goodness, he was like, hey, I'm Kenny, wake up, wake up, wake up. And they sent emissaries down to Kibo to bring support up for us and bring tea. Because, the body is fighting against this unnatural environment that it's in. So it's shutting down to the point where if you are left there, you could actually just die. You could actually just die. So they realized that there was a imminent danger just by us being on the mountain. And they got us off the mountain as fast as possible. So we got off the mountain, down back to Kibo. This was about maybe 1 o'clock. And remember we started climbing at like 11. So we've already done 12 hours. And we can't even sleep at Kibo. We're going all the way down to Horombo. People were tired, understandably. So they got into their sleeping bags to have a nap. The lead guide came to me and told me, Wandia, your clients can't sleep here. You have to get off the mountain. So I'm there trying to get guys up and they're just ignoring me. Eventually, after half an hour, they freshened up and we pushed off the mountain. We got to Horombo. That evening, it was a celebration. We couldn't believe what we had been able to achieve. That mountain was difficult. The summit was one of the most difficult things I had done to that point. Of course, I've done more difficult things since then, but that broke me again. And the reason it was so hard is because, I was always carrying emotional weight from home. I was always carrying that. So that thing weighed on me very heavily. And the reason I'm sharing this story is just to encourage you that you are stronger than you imagine that you are. Number 2, there's always help ready to be given to those who are willing to ask. And that is why Wellness with Wandia exists. For you to have a conversation, for me to support you, to be able to figure out how can I support you in your journey. as you navigate the challenges you're going through, the life events, balancing the different roles that you're balancing, being able to walk towards your goals. That is why Wellness with Wandia was created. So as you continue to navigate through life, thinking about the things that are in your way, the things that you are walking through, I'd encourage you, don't give up. Keep moving forward. Keep challenging yourself. Ask for help where you can. One other thing that I have learned, which is very significant, is never be afraid to ask for help. You're not the first one to do what it is that you're doing. You're not the first one to go through what it is that you're going through. There are people ready to help if only you ask. So sign up. Call the number below and allow us to walk this journey with you. Thank you for listening.